I stared at my phone screen, the banking app, showing a balance of $3. 3. After 10 years of grinding, saving every spare cent, living in a cramped studio while my coworkers bought fancy cars, I had built $2,900,000. Then my dad sent me a text. "Thanks, son. Your money just secured your sister's future." I did not understand. Not until I called home and heard him laughing. That laugh changed everything. Before I tell you how my own family betrayed me in the worst way possible, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe, because what happened next will make you question everything you thought you knew about trust. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. I grew up in Colorado, in a house where fairness was never really on the table. My parents, Richard and Linda, made it clear from the moment my sister Bridget was born that she was special. She was 5 years younger than me, and from day one the rules were different for her. When I turned 16, I got a job at the local grocery store to pay for my own clothes and gas money. Bridget. She got a credit card and a weekly allowance that was more than I made in a month. I remember sitting at the dinner table when I was 17 talking about college applications. Richard barely looked up from his plate. "You will figure it out," he said. "Bridget will need our help with her education. She is going to that private arts academy." I nodded, kept my mouth shut, and applied for every scholarship I could find. I worked 2 jobs through college, took out minimal loans, and graduated with a finance degree. Nobody from my family showed up to my graduation. They were busy taking Bridget to Paris for her 18th birthday. After college, I landed a position at a mid-sized investment firm in Denver. The pay was not incredible at first, maybe $45,000 a year, but I saw potential. I rented a tiny studio apartment with a bathroom so small you could barely turn around in it. My furniture came from thrift stores and Craigslist. I ate ramen rice and whatever I could cook in bulk. My coworkers thought I was crazy. They would go out for happy hour, drop $60 on drinks and appetizers, and I would go home and make myself a sandwich. But I had a plan. Every paycheck I put away, 30% minimum. When I got promoted to analyst, that number went up to 40%. I learned everything I could about investing stocks, bonds, index funds, real estate investment trusts. I read books, took online courses, watched my portfolio grow slowly but steadily. It was not glamorous. There were no vacations, no new cars, no designer clothes, just discipline and a dream of financial freedom. By the time I turned 30, I had done it. $2,900,000. It felt surreal looking at that number in my account. I could buy a house. I could start my own business. I could finally breathe without worrying about money. That number represented a decade of sacrifice, of saying no to everything fun, of watching my youth slip by, while I built something solid. Then about 3 months before everything fell apart, something strange started happening. Richard and Linda began calling me regularly. My dad, who had maybe called me twice in the previous 5 years, was suddenly checking in every week. "How is work? How is life? Are you seeing anyone?" My mom started asking detailed questions about my finances. "Do you have a good accountant? Are you investing wisely? What are your long-term plans?" I thought maybe they were finally trying to be better parents. Maybe they realized they had neglected me and wanted to make amends. So I opened up a little. I told them I had been saving aggressively, that I had built a substantial nest egg. I did not give them exact numbers, but I could see the wheels turning in their heads. Then Richard mentioned Bridget. "Your sister has this wonderful business idea," he said one evening over the phone. "She wants to open a boutique. You know, high-end fashion curated pieces. She has it all planned out." I stayed quiet. He continued, "She just needs some capital to get started. We would help, but we already refinanced the house to pay for her graduate program." I felt the ask coming before he said it. "We were hoping maybe you could help family out." I told him no, politely but firmly. I explained that I had my own plans for that money, that Bridget had never worked a real job in her life, that starting a business without experience was risky. Richard got quiet. Then he said something that should have been a bigger warning sign. "Family takes care of family, Del Mar. Remember that." The call ended shortly after. 2 weeks later, Bridget called me crying. She said I was selfish, that I had all this money sitting around doing nothing while she was struggling. I pointed out that she was 25 and had never paid for anything herself. She hung up on me. The guilt gnawed at me for days, but I held firm. That money represented my future, not hers. Then came the family dinner invitation. Richard sent me a formal text saying we needed to have a family meeting. I should have known something was wrong. My family was not the type to have meetings, but I went hoping maybe we could talk things through like adults. The atmosphere in that house was suffocating from the moment I walked in. Linda was in the kitchen, barely acknowledging me. Bridget sat on the couch with her arms crossed, red-eyed, like she had been crying for hours. Richard stood by the fireplace like he was about to deliver some kind of speech. He started by talking about sacrifice, about how he and Linda had worked so hard to raise us, to give us opportunities. I bit my tongue, remembering all the times I had paid my own way. Then he pivoted to Bridget. She has so much potential, he said. This boutique could be her future, but she needs $500,000 to make it happen. We need you to help her, Delmar. I looked at Bridget. She would not meet my eyes. I looked at my mom, who was wringing her hands nervously. Then I looked at Richard, and I saw something cold in his expression. This was not a request. This was a demand wrapped in family obligation. I said no. I explained as calmly as I could that $500,000 was an enormous amount of money, that Bridget had no business experience, that the failure rate for retail startups was over 50% in the first year, that I could not risk my financial security on a venture that had such low chances of success. Richard exploded. His face turned red, and he started yelling about how ungrateful I was, how everything I had I owed to them. I stood up and said I had paid for my own education, my own life, everything. Linda started crying, saying she was so disappointed in me. Bridget screamed that I was a selfish bastard who only cared about myself. I left without saying another word. My hands were shaking as I drove home. Part of me felt terrible. Part of me felt angry. But mostly I felt sure that I had made the right choice. My money was not their emergency fund. A month of silence passed. I thought maybe they had accepted my decision. I threw myself into work, got another small promotion, and started looking at houses online. Then on a Tuesday morning, I got an email notification from my bank. Large transaction alert. My stomach dropped. I opened the app with trembling fingers. Account balance $3.12. I refreshed the page 3 times, certain there was an error. But the transaction history was clear. $2,900,000 had been transferred out yesterday afternoon. The destination account was listed under the name Bridget Thompson. I could not breathe. My vision blurred. 10 years. 10 years of work, of sacrifice, of discipline, gone in a single transaction. I called the bank immediately. My voice shaking so badly the representative asked if I was okay. She pulled up my account and confirmed the transaction. It was authorized, she said. Someone with legal access to the account initiated the transfer. Legal access. Then I remembered. 5 years ago, when I first opened that investment account, I was young and paranoid about emergencies. What if something happened to me? What if I was in an accident and could not access my funds? So I had added Richard as an authorized user on the account, just in case. I had forgotten about it completely. He had not. I hung up and immediately called my parents' house. Richard answered on the second ring. His voice was cheerful. "Hey, son, what can I do for you?" "Where is my money?" I managed to choke out. He laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, that. Thanks, son. Your money just secured your sister's future. That boutique is opening next month. Prime location downtown. You should come to the grand opening. You stole from me." My voice was barely a whisper. Stole. Richard's tone turned condescending. "Do not be dramatic. We are family. Everything you have comes from us anyway. We raised you, fed you, put a roof over your head. You owe us. And Bridget needs this opportunity more than you need to hoard money. I paid for my own college. I worked for every single cent of that money. Does not matter. Family helps family. Bridget deserves happiness too. Your mother and I decided this was the right thing to do." In the background, I could hear Linda. "Stop being so dramatic, Delmar. Your sister deserves a chance at success, too. Then I heard Bridget laughing that high-pitched giggle she had. Thanks, big brother. I am going to name the store after you. Maybe Delmar's Boutique. What do you think? Something inside me cracked? Not broke, but cracked just enough to let something cold and clear seep through. Richard was still talking. If you make trouble about this, you are out of this family forever. We will cut you off completely. Not that it matters, you never come around anyway. I hung up without responding. I sat on the floor of my apartment staring at the wall. The betrayal was so complete, so total, that I could not even cry. They had stolen a decade of my life. They had stolen my future. And they felt justified doing it. But then, slowly, I started to smile, because they had no idea what they had actually taken. Let me take you back 6 months to when I first noticed my parents' sudden interest in my finances. I was not stupid. I knew what people were capable of when money was involved, even family, maybe especially family. So I called Kyle, my best friend from college, who had become a lawyer, specializing in financial fraud. Dude, Kyle said when I explained the situation, your dad still has access to that old account. That is a massive security risk. You need to remove him or move the money. I told him I would handle it, but Kyle, being the suspicious person he was, suggested something else. What if they try something? What if we set up a trap? At first I thought he was being paranoid, but the more I considered it, the more sense it made. If my parents were willing to ask for $500,000, what would stop them from taking more if they had the chance? So Kyle and I devised a plan. First, I opened a new account at a completely different bank. I transferred all $2,900,000 into that account. Richard had no access, no knowledge, it even existed. The old account where he was still listed as authorized, I left with exactly $3 in it, just enough to keep it active. But then Kyle suggested we take it further. We want to make sure that if they do take money, there are consequences, he said. Real consequences. So we structured a very specific kind of trap. I took out a loan, not from a traditional bank, but from a specialized financial firm that dealt in high-risk lending with very particular terms. The loan was for exactly $2,900,000. The interest rate was 15% annually. But here was the key clause. If the loan amount was transferred to any third party without the express written consent of the lender, that third party would assume full legal responsibility for the debt. Kyle helped me draft the paperwork so it was airtight. Then I deposited that loan money into the old account, the one Richard could access. To anyone looking at the account balance, it would appear I had $2,900,000 in savings. But it was not savings. It was debt. Toxic, legally binding debt. I set up notifications for any transaction over $1,000. Then I waited. I dropped hints to my mom about my successful saving strategy. I mentioned numbers just vague enough to confirm what they suspected. I played the role of the naive son who trusted his family. When that transaction alert came through and I saw the money had been transferred to Bridget, I knew the trap had worked perfectly. Everything they had stolen was actually a loan that they were now legally responsible for, and the clock was already ticking on that 15% interest. After I hung up the phone with Richard, after he had laughed at me and Bridget had mocked me, I sat in my apartment and made one more call. Kyle answered immediately. They took it, I said. All of it. Kyle was quiet for a moment. Then I heard him exhale. Okay, let me make some calls. This is going to get ugly for them. Good, I replied. They deserve ugly. Kyle moved fast. Within 48 hours, he had filed a lawsuit against Richard and Linda for unauthorized transfer of funds, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. The paperwork was airtight. Richard had used his authorized access to transfer money without my consent for his own family's benefit. That was textbook financial abuse. Simultaneously, the lending firm I had borrowed from activated their clause. They sent legal notice to Bridget that she was now the holder of a $2,900,000 debt, with interest accruing daily at 15% per year. The letter outlined her payment obligations and the consequences of default, including asset seizure and legal action. I imagine the moment she opened that letter. The confusion then, the dawning horror. She probably called Richard immediately, screaming about what I had done. and Richard probably felt that first flutter of panic in his chest. 3 days after the transfer, my phone rang. "Richard!" I let it go to voicemail. He called again, and again. On the fourth call, I answered. "What the hell did you do?" His voice was shaking, no longer cocky. "They are saying Bridget owes $3 million. How is that possible?" The loan company had added their fees and calculated initial interest. The number had grown already. "It is exactly what you took," I said calmly. "But it was not my savings, Richard. It was a loan with very specific terms. You tricked us. You set us up." "No," I corrected him. "You stole from me. I just made sure there would be consequences. You used your access to my account to commit fraud, and now Bridget is holding debt she cannot pay." In the background, I could hear Linda sobbing. Bridget was screaming something unintelligible. "This is insane," Richard shouted. "You are destroying your own family." I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just cold clarity. "You destroyed this family when you decided my life's work was worth less than Bridget's whim. You wanted my money. Now you have it, along with everything that comes with it. We will return it. Just drop the lawsuit. We will give it back." Richard's voice cracked with desperation. "You cannot return what you already spent," I said. "The boutique deposit, the inventory she ordered, that money is gone. And the lending company does not care about your intentions. They want their money from whoever holds it. That is Bridget now. Please," Richard whispered. "She is your sister." I hung up without answering. Over the next several weeks, the legal process unfolded exactly as Kyle had predicted. The evidence was overwhelming. Richard had clear, authorized access to the account, but his use of that access to transfer the entire balance to another family member for their benefit constituted fraud. The bank records the timing, the amount, everything pointed to a planned theft. Bridget tried to argue she did not know the money was a loan, but ignorance was not a legal defense. She had accepted a transfer of nearly $3 million without questioning where it came from or whether it was legitimate. The lending firm was ruthless. They did not care about family drama. They wanted their money plus interest plus fees. Bridget had already spent a significant portion of the money. She had signed a lease on a retail space downtown, put down deposits, ordered inventory, hired contractors to build out the store. All of that money was gone, sunk into a business that would never open. The lending company filed for asset seizure. Bridget had nothing substantial in her name. She had been living off our parents' generosity her whole life. But Richard and Linda, they owned their house, a nice 4-bedroom in a decent neighborhood worth maybe $450,000. The lending company put a lien on it. I watched it all unfold from a distance. Kyle kept me updated. "Your parents are trying to negotiate," he told me one afternoon. "They are offering to pay back a portion if you drop the lawsuit." I thought about it for maybe 5 seconds. "No," I said. "They need to understand actions have consequences." Kyle did not argue. The court date came. I sat in that courtroom and watched my parents squirm. Richard tried to play the victim, saying he thought he was helping family, that he did not understand the legal implications. The judge was not sympathetic. "You had authorized access for emergency purposes," she said. "This was not an emergency. This was theft." The judgment was clear. Richard and Linda were ordered to repay me $2,900,000, the exact amount taken from my original account. Because they no longer had the money, the court set up a payment plan that would take them decades to fulfill. Their credit was destroyed. They had to sell their house to make the first substantial payment. Bridget was ordered to repay the lending company. The boutique never opened. She lost every deposit, every advance payment. She had to take 2 jobs just to make the minimum monthly payments on the debt. Her credit score tanked. She would be paying off that loan for years, possibly decades. 6 months after the judgment, Richard called me one last time. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. His voice was different now. Tired, defeated. "We lost everything," he said quietly. "The house is sold. We are renting a small apartment across town. Bridget is working at a call center in a restaurant. Are you happy now?" I thought about his question. Was I happy? No. Happiness was not what I felt. But I am at peace, I told him. You taught me a valuable lesson. What lesson, he asked, sounding genuinely confused. That blood does not mean loyalty, I said, and that actions have consequences. You chose greed over your son. Now you live with that choice. Linda took the phone. Her voice was small, apologetic. I am sorry, Delmar. We made a mistake. But her apology felt hollow. She was not sorry for betraying me. She was sorry they got caught. I hung up without responding. Bridget never reached out. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she blamed me for ruining her life. In her mind, I was the villain. She could not see that her own entitlement and complicity had consequences. I blocked all their numbers after that call. I did not need their guilt trips or their belated apologies. The months following the court judgment were strange. I had won completely and totally. My real money was safe in my new account, still growing with compound interest. The loan had been repaid by the seizure of my parents' assets and the payment plan they were locked into. Bridget was drowning in debt she would spend years climbing out of. Justice by any objective measure had been served. So why did I feel so empty? I sat in my small apartment one evening, staring at my bank balance. The number had actually grown. I was now at $3,100,000, but looking at it did not bring the joy I thought it would. I realized something painful. I had spent 10 years sacrificing everything for this money, in part because I was trying to prove something to my family. I wanted them to see my success and regret how they had treated me. I wanted validation, but they would never give it to me. Not really, and I did not need it anymore. That was the revelation that cracked something open inside me. I did not need their approval. I never had. I called Kyle one night and talked through everything. Man, he said after listening for an hour, you've been carrying this weight your whole life. Your family was toxic long before they stole from you. The money was just the final proof. He was right. I had been so focused on building financial security that I had ignored my emotional poverty. I had no real relationships outside of Kyle and a few work acquaintances. I had spent 10 years in survival mode, and now I did not know how to actually live, so I started therapy. It felt weird at first, sitting in an office and talking about my feelings with a stranger, but Dr. Harper was patient. She helped me understand that my family's betrayal was not a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of their character. She taught me about boundaries, about the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. You can forgive someone for your own peace, she explained, and still never let them back into your life. That concept freed something in me. I did not have to carry anger to maintain boundaries. I could let go of the resentment and still protect myself. Over months of sessions, I worked through the pain. I mourned the family I wished I had not the one I actually had. I accepted that some people, even parents, are not capable of unconditional love. I started to build a real life. I bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood, nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom with a yard. I adopted a dog from the shelter, a goofy golden retriever mix named Buddy. I joined a recreational soccer league and made friends who knew nothing about my past. I went on dates. Some went well, some did not. But I was putting myself out there. Work stopped being an escape and became just a job. A good job that I enjoyed, but not my entire identity. I took a vacation for the first time in years, a solo trip to the Pacific Northwest where I hiked and read books and did not check my investment portfolio once. Kyle noticed the change. You seem lighter, he said one day over lunch. I am, I told him. I let go of something heavy. He smiled. Good. You deserve peace, man. You really do. I realized he was right. I did deserve peace. Not because I had won some legal battle, but because I was a human being worthy of happiness regardless of what my family thought. One afternoon I was planting flowers in my front yard when I thought about Richard's question, "Are you happy now?" The answer finally was yes. Not because they were suffering. Their consequences were their own. I was happy because I was free. Free from their expectations, their manipulation, their toxic dynamic. Free to build a life on my own terms. I learned that family is not defined by blood. It is defined by love, respect, and mutual support. Kyle was more of a brother to me than anyone who shared my DNA. My soccer teammates who met for beers after games and actually cared how my week went were more family than the people who raised me. I had chosen my family, and they had chosen me back. The lesson I learned was not about revenge. Revenge is hollow. The lesson was about self-worth. I learned that protecting yourself is not selfish. Setting boundaries is not cruel. Walking away from people who hurt you, even if they are family, is not wrong. It is survival. It is self-love. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is choose yourself. I also learned about preparation. If I had not listened to Kyle's instincts, if I had not set up that trap, I would have lost everything with no recourse. Trust should never be blind, even with family, especially with family sometimes. Protect what you build. Document everything. Have backup plans. These are not acts of paranoia. They are acts of wisdom. As for my parents and Bridget, I do not think about them much anymore. Sometimes I wonder if Richard lies awake at night, regretting his choices. I wonder if Linda understands what they lost when they chose money over their son. I wonder if Bridget ever takes responsibility for her part in it all. But these are passing thoughts, not obsessions. Their lives are their own now, separate from mine. I heard through distant connections that they told people I abandoned them, that I was cruel and heartless. Let them. People who know me know the truth. People who do not know me do not matter. I refuse to spend energy managing their narrative. What I do think about is the future. I still have my nest egg bigger now than ever. But money is a tool, not a goal. I am looking at investment properties not to hoard wealth, but to build something sustainable. I might start a business eventually, something I am passionate about. I have time to figure it out, because I protected myself when it mattered most. I think about the young man I was at 20, working 2 jobs and eating ramen, convinced that financial security would solve all his problems. I want to tell him that money helps, but it does not heal wounds. Only you can do that. Only you can decide what you are worth. So here I am now, sitting on my back porch with Buddy at my feet, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. My phone buzzes with a text from Kyle, asking if I want to grab dinner. My calendar has a soccer game tomorrow night. My house is small but mine. My life is quiet but peaceful. This is what freedom feels like. Not revenge, not vindication, but simply the absence of toxin. Do you think I should have handled it differently? Have you ever had to cut off family members to protect yourself? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about standing up for yourself. Share this with someone who needs to hear that choosing yourself is not selfish. It is necessary. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that you deserve respect, even from family. Take care of yourself out there, and remember that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the family you are born into.